Welcome to Faithing Out Loud. I'm Pastor Tony Ruth Smith, and this is my husband, Pastor Wesley Smith.
Hello.
And we are delighted that you're here to be with us as we think about what it means to live our lives out loud in the world in a way that honors Christ. Let's join the conversation.
For the past 2 months, almost.
3. It's 3.
Well, past several months. Every Wednesday, we have been meeting with a group of, almost every Wednesday, 13 8th graders and 1 10th grader. There might be a 9th grader sprinkled in. We've been meeting with some a group of 14 youth from our church, going through the process, what we call in the Methodist tradition, confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned it a couple times in our last week's episode about baptism. But
baptism and confirmation are partners.
They're partners. And so every year we invite, we ask 8th graders in our church.
And 8th grade and older.
Older, if depends on whether or not they've been through confirmation, up until probably about sophomore, junior year. You get older than that, that gets, that's a different conversation. But, and it's really 4-month process of, every Wednesday we meet with this group of young people and we talk about what it means, first of all, what it means to be a Christian, but what it means to be a Christian in the United Methodist tradition, and what it means to be a Christian here at Williamson's Chapel United Methodist Church. So we're talking about basically what it means to be a member of the church. And
what it means to follow Jesus.
What it means to follow Jesus and to be a faithful Christian. And this kind of process of instruction and kind of incorporation into the body of Christ for young people, it takes a lot of different forms and different traditions. It's a much lengthier and more intense process in the Catholic Church and
in the Lutheran
Church.
Yeah. The catechism.
Yeah, that's like what, a 3-year process, catechism?
I think it depends on the tradition. So
maybe a year.
For those of you, we have a lot of people in our church that were raised Catholic or were raised Lutheran or were raised in a tradition where they did catechism. Both our parents were baptized and confirmed in the Lutheran church.
Yeah, my dad
and went through Lutheran catechism, and that meant memorizing a bunch of things too. I mean, there's a lot of
and you're like, it's closer to like a bar mitzvah.
Right.
Like we have to memorize it. Now, not as there are big differences, but it's that level of intensity and having to, I guess, pass the test, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, you have to commit to these things. In the Methodist tradition, my confirmation, I believe, was like when I was in 6th grade.
Right, and that's interesting. That's an interesting transformation that's happened in the last, I don't know, it's within our careers in ministry. When we first started in ministry, it was pretty typical that confirmation happened at 6th grade.
Yes.
And before you judge that too harshly, if you ask a lot of people when they were baptized, like when they chose to be baptized as, if they're not in an infant baptism or they weren't baptized as an infant, a lot of people remarkably do that around age 11 or 12.
11 or 12.
I mean, so there is some passage of time thing happening there.
It's
a life
rite of passage.
A rite of passage kind of thing. Anyway, but we in the last 25 years, that has progressively moved up. We do that now at 8th grade. And I got to tell you, having taught confirmation for 6th graders and 8th graders, the difference is striking. The conversations you can have.
Yes.
We've married. That has been a very intentional move to move it a little bit later.
And some of that is just paying attention to kind of how things have changed in our culture developmentally over time. When I first started ministry, there were more 6th graders who were on close to the same level as some of the 8th graders are now, just in terms of self-understanding, but more so now than, say, 25 years ago. 6th graders now are definitely still more in that childhood category, which is fine. That's more cultural changes and everything than than individual stuff. But eighth graders have a much more developed self-awareness, and the questions they ask are typically deeper.
Right, they're ready for more questions. I remember, having, again, it was helpful for me to actually have teenagers and sort of see, sixth grade, a child that age, they start really caring what other people think and start being very mindful of where they are like and not like other people.
Yeah.
I also think that stage, there is never more than when you are, like, the difference between a 3-month-old and a 6-month-old is a big deal.
Yeah.
And then when you get to like 8, that sort of 3 months doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about hitting puberty, 3 months age difference means
it could be a lot.
Is a lot. And so there's a lot of sort of fitting in and conformity and all that stuff that's happening in that 6th grade, 7th grade. And by the time they get to the second half of 8th grade, lots of kids are kind of moving out of that and kind of getting more comfortable in their own skin.
There's some differentiation that happens.
Right, and which is actually quite helpful then to have some of the God conversation, that they feel more free to speak freely about themselves. And what I would say about confirmation is, it is important in your lifetime that you respond to your baptism.
Yes.
Lots of people are ready to do that around this age of confirmation, but plenty of people are not.
Right.
And one of the things that's really important, I think, that conversation we have with kids when we're doing confirmation is that this is their choice. Mm-hmm. This is the moment when you are learning, what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to be baptized? What does it mean to believe in the resurrection? What does it mean to, like, how do I read my Bible? How do I grow in faith? What does it mean to be in the Methodist tradition? What does it mean to understand grace in its fullness?
Yep.
How do I pray? How do I read my Bible? Why should I be involved in the church? What does it mean to worship? How do I serve? Why does God call me to? What are my spiritual gifts? Who am I?
Yep.
And some people are ready to answer those questions and say yes, and some people aren't.
Right. And
that's okay either way. But at some point in our life, the hope is that we're going to answer those questions one way or another. And that's part of it's us confirming the gift and owning the gift in a different way.
Yeah, it's at our baptism. For those of us who are baptized as infants, at our baptism, promises are made on our behalf. Mm-hmm. And really kind of commitments are made on our behalf. When we are confirmed, the idea is that we are now in a place we're old enough to take responsibility for our, for saying yes to that invitation to follow Jesus.
Right.
That we can make that promise for ourselves. That it's not my parents' faith, it's not the faith of my pastor or other church members. It's a decision I'm making for myself.
Right.
And it's confirming the promises that were made at my baptism and the decisions that were made at my baptism. It's confirming that yes, yes.
Right, literally to make firm.
Yeah, to make firm, and I'm going to live out. And so we tell parents, very first night of confirmation, we have the kids and the parents there. Mm-hmm. And the first part of this introduction, and the second part's a little bit about John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement. But the first part of that, we are very clear with parents that this is not your decision. Mm-hmm. That this is part of what we're going to be talking to these confirmands about, is that this is their decision. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't happen often, but it's happened a handful of times where a confirmand to get into the process and they'll say they're not ready. And we repeatedly reassure the confirmands that if you're not ready, if it's something you feel like you don't want to do, we've got your back with your parents.
And here's what I would want to say about that. Confirmation, baptism might happen one time. I think confirmation happens over and over again. Like, and what I mean by that is you're always growing. It's not like suddenly at 8th grade you've got this whole Jesus thing figured out and you say yes and you're done.
Yeah.
Like, you confirm your faith every time you do another Bible study, every time you do another act of service. Every time you make the effort to grow in your prayer, to take, as we're talking about right now, one more faithful step along an intentional discipleship pathway. Like, you are always confirming your faith. Yeah. You're always, it's why we do an affirmation of faith. That every time you say it, it's reaffirming and confirming what it is that you believe, what defines your life, and what's going to steady your steps.
Right.
And that you're choosing again your baptism. You're choosing to live into your baptism. You're choosing God's grace for yourself.
Yep.
And yes, that might happen the first time at confirmation, but my goodness, it's not the last time it ever happens. And we ought to be doing it our whole life.
Okay. So, and absolutely. But and as we kind of move towards confirming this class at our church, this
coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday.
One service, by the way.
One service is coming Sunday at 10 o'clock. I began my ministry career as a middle high youth pastor. Mm-hmm. And that group of people, that young people, middle schoolers, are some of the most underestimated, overlooked. It's groups of people in the church. And it's been my experience in serving in youth ministry and in teaching confirmation a number of times that they're learning, they're growing, they have a lot to learn and a lot of room to grow, but man, they are thinking about these questions. Like, we have our confirmation class this year, really fun bunch, really. But you bring them into a room, and I've never seen a confirmation group segregate boys and girls as quickly as this one does.
Oh yeah,
just
for real.
Boom.
Yeah,
but
literally like oil and water.
Yeah,
entertaining.
Yeah. But they're not mean to each other.
They're just, I'm going to sit with my people.
But with this group, like, the first 15 to 20 minutes is kind of like, all right, come on, guys. Hang in there. Come on. All right, quiet down. But I'm telling you, once the last 40 to 45 minutes of confirmation of each week, once we kind of get into the topic, they're locked in.
Right.
And they, I've noticed here in this church, every year we talk confirmation, they are more engaged than what other adults might think they would be.
Right.
That they pay attention to what people say. They pay attention to what people think about the church and about Christians out in the world. They pay attention to parents when if you're a parent of a teenager, if you're talking about this stuff, they're listening.
That's right.
They pay attention to what's said in church.
That's right.
And so I think it's important that we confirm and do this process with young people at this age, just as a reminder to the church that don't overlook these people.
That's right.
God is doing something in their lives. God's grace is at work in them. And they probably hear and understand a lot more than sometimes we believe.
That's right. Or than we give them credit for.
Yeah, and what I love about the groups we've led through confirmation here at Williamson's Chapel, so many of these kids have been very, very interested in missions and service. They understand that being a Christian has to have like real world impact.
Right. They get the faithing out loud of it all.
Yes.
That they've got to, there's got to be a translation between the things that they are learning in confirmation that are real nuts and bolts stuff that you need to know. You need to know some good basic theology.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we're not using that language necessarily with them, but that's what we're teaching them is good basic theology. And here's the truth. The Bible is right when it says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. A lot of kids, a lot of kids are going to have a season where that feels like they walk away, but they don't really. And that stuff that is embedded deep is going to find its way back out as they grow and change. And that's really some of the most exciting work that we do. So y'all be praying for these confirmands, and maybe take a minute and think about your own confirmation, when did it happen, and how you're still living into your own confirming of your faith, how you're still confirming it in the ways that you're living in your world.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking about this.
Thank you for listening to Faithing Out Loud. Be sure to like and subscribe if your platform allows that. We'll see you next time.